everyone. My name is Deborah Roberts. I'm on the select board for Stoughton. Hi, how are you? Today, we're going to talk with members of the Stoughton Disability Commission. Now, the town of Stoughton takes ADA compliance very seriously. So as I turn and I look at our two guests, one is Christiana Odunze and Charlotte Mullins, who's the chair of the Stoughton Disability Commission. They're going to share a little bit about their background, but I can tell you, you're going to enjoy this segment. We're going to start with what is the purpose of the Disability Commission, and then go on to a couple of sites that are in Stoughton and about a survey that they're doing. It's a vast amount of knowledge, I know, but it will be informative and helpful. So with that, I'll start with our chair, Charlotte Mullins. Can you please share a little bit about your background and the one important point you would like the audience to leave this session with?
Yes, thank you, Deborah, for arranging this conversation. So I've been a resident of Stoughton for over 35 years. Professionally, I'm an audiologist, a doctor of audiology at Boston Children's Hospital. So in my work, I work with deaf and hard of hearing children and their families, some of the adults, of course, who are also deaf or hard of hearing. I am on an advisory board to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education on the educational needs of children with reduced hearing. And I've also been working closely with the State Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, along with the State Department for Children and Families, to look at the needs of deaf and hard of hearing children who are in foster care.
Oh my gosh.
So it's through my work that when an opening came up on the Disabilities Commission, I looked to have a way to give back to the town, and was appointed in 2020. And I would say the one thing that I hope everyone takes away from our conversation today is to know a little bit about what the town is doing to ensure full access for everyone, but also where they can turn for resources and some support.
Wonderful. Christiana.
Oh, thank you, Deborah, for having us here. My name is Christiana Odunze. I am a certified adult gerontology nurse practitioner. I have been a Stoughton resident for over 20 years, and I'm happy to be here with Charlotte. I currently work as the Vice President of Healthcare Services for Brockton Area Multi-Services. Brockton Area Multi-Services is a nonprofit human services organization that encourages and actually advocates for adults with developmental disability, whether it's the residential services and our adult day programs. We also have employment services with adults with disabilities. And so I've been working with this Brockton Area Multi-Services for over 15 years. And so it was natural for me to, when I think about where I can give back, I decided to join be the member of the Stoughton Disability Commission. So I am happy to be here. And one thing I would like people to take away from this conversation is that disability is not a label. We can't label and say, oh, adults with disability, or either, everyone has their abilities. Some of us have a different ability. And so people need to understand when we send out a survey that it's important that people really respond to that so we can know where to help, what we need as a community.
Well, thank you very, very much. Let's just jump right in. What is the mission of the Stoughton Disability Commission?
So the Disability Commission is really an advisory board to the town on certainly ways that our buildings and our resources and our services can be accessible to everyone, but also as a resource to the residents of the town. So for instance, we had a gentleman reach out to us about a parking issue by his home. I had another resident reach out to us about a parking issue in a commercial parking lot, things like that. So people reach out to us with questions. When we can, we refer them on to the different department heads within the town to try and rectify the problem if there is actually a solution to it.
So for this segment, we're going to focus on property that's owned by Stoughton, but there are a lot of other properties that are privately held. So we're not going to really address those at this point in time. But we're also going to talk about your survey, the assessment that you're going to have. But can we just go, where do you want to start? Because it's all going to be very interesting and helpful to us.
Well, I think, an important part is, although we are the Disabilities Commission, there are many, many residents who have accessibility issues who would not consider themselves disabled. And so perhaps the name of our committee should be changed. But disabilities is not only just folks with perhaps a physical challenge where they have to travel in a wheelchair or use crutches. It is certainly people who are deaf or hard of hearing, vision impaired. Mental health issues qualify under all of the disability laws. And so our senior citizens are certainly folks that we want to take into consideration when we're looking at whether modifications need to be made, because many of them certainly have some mobility issues, but or vision issues or hearing issues, but may not think of themselves as being a disabled individual.
Mm-hmm.
No, I do agree with Charlotte. I think when I think about disabilities, like I said earlier, you need to think about your loved ones having challenges. Aging comes with its own different decreased ability to do certain things, but that people really don't recognize that as a challenge. I think when we use disability, everyone thinks about the person in a wheelchair. Even with the post-COVID, we had new forms of disabilities that people just post-COVID, people got really sick, whether it's your sense of taste or loss of vision or loss of, inability to walk long distances. Those are considered disabilities that one can, it's different from what your ability was before. So we are very lucky that we are able to talk about these things. And like I said earlier, when you have these challenges, looking for a place for resources to help you, whether it's your child or your older adult parent that is living by themselves. We are in a great state of Massachusetts where actually, I was researching policy, genius.com says Massachusetts is ranked number 4 when it comes to taking care of adult people with disabilities. So we are very fortunate to be here, and we would like to, make sure that people reach out if they have help, if they want to even assess to see if is this a disability or am I like having a chronic medical problem. So those kind of issues are things that we need to bring up.
That is so very important, because I see as we age into being a senior, I have people calling me saying, well, where's the Council on Aging? And I'll say, it's on Rockland Street, and there's a sign there. But when I look to see the size of the sign, with the traffic being so forceful and heavy and the small sign, you can rarely see it if you don't know what you're looking for, So signage is important. And once again, I must say that Stoughton takes ADA compliance very seriously. So can you talk about some of the things that you're working on right now, like that assessment?
Well, we've certainly covered a lot of things just in the 4 years since I joined the commission. The commission has always been a recognized group within the town, but sometimes people come and go, and leadership moves on and things like that. So the commission hadn't met for quite a while. So in the 4 years since I've been on, and the 2 years now with Christiana's input as well, we've looked to not only figure out exactly what our role is, we've met with the State Commission on Disabilities to understand better. And they hold regular meetings with all of the different state commissions within the state. We've met with different department heads. We've met with the town managers. We have, for instance, we met with the Community Preservation Committee, the CPC, and talked to them sort of about their application process and how they decide on the projects that they will fund. And as a result of our conversation, they now have a part on their application that asks the applicant to indicate how that particular project will meet disability needs. We have
The library.
what's that?
We did the library.
We do, yep, we've worked with the library. We provided some keyboards for the computers that have large print on the keys themselves, and they're backlit. So with someone with low vision would be better able to access those computers. We purchased a wheelchair modifier that lives at the recreation department, so that if someone wanted to, for instance, take a child who is in a wheelchair, say down to the Storybook Trail in the bird reservation, you can attach this onto the front of the wheelchair for better stability on an uneven surface like the hiking paths back there. Or if you've gone up to Glen Echo or something like that. So we've done a number of things like that. And then our current real effort is working with the town and the town leadership to meet one very large requirement under the Americans with Disabilities Act, which requires every town and city to go through what's called a self-evaluation and transition plan. So it's looking at all of your buildings, all of your programming, all of your services, all of your visual media, websites, things like that, for compliance for individuals with disabilities. So the town was able to secure a grant to do this and has hired the Collins Center from UMass Boston. And they have come in, and a survey was put out to residents within the town to solicit input as to some of the barriers that they have encountered. The Collins Center has been looking at all of the web-based material, because if you've got a computer and you have to put an enlarger in front of it, can you still actually read the text? Things like that. And then along with the Collins Center folks, an architectural firm has been working with the town to go through all of the public spaces with an eye towards disability access. So things like, are there Braille signs in every building? Are there ramps that meet the right slope and grade? Are there, for instance, for someone who has difficulty speaking, if you need to go into, say, the assessor's office and pay your water bill, but yet you don't have the ability to speak clearly, maybe you've had a stroke, how do you get that point across to the folks in the office? Is there another way that they can communicate with each other? So they're looking at all of these various aspects with a very keen eye to what is required under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And a large report will come to the town probably later this year, building by building, program by program, office by office, with all of the needs and things that don't meet the ADA requirements, along with suggestions for improvement and cost estimates when it comes to things like building modifications. And then it will be up to the town to take that report and move forward and figure out, okay, programming things may be more easily changed. Some of the buildings, yes, there are probably some simple things that can be done, and other buildings will take probably a large capital expenditure. And how do we prioritize those things, bring those things forward to town meeting for hopefully approval and modifications?
Mm-hmm. Now, there are certain specific buildings or locations, I call them low-hanging fruit, that we know we don't really require the Collins Center to tell us that they don't meet ADA compliance. But can you name a few that you would make an assumption that they're going to be on the list? So those are those low-hanging fruit type of buildings or locations or sites.
Yeah, so again, this came from a resident in town who pointed out a number of places to us. One is certainly the Stoughton Police Station. And what I never realized is there is actually handicapped parking spaces on the side of the building. So there is not a visible sign. I know anytime I've had business at the police station, I just pull along the curb on Rose Street. Mm-hmm. But along the side of the building, there are a few spots for residents to use, two of which are designated as handicap spaces. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, the asphalt right at the curb cut, which would allow someone with a wheelchair to then access the ramp, has all disintegrated and needs to be replaced and repaved, as well as the spaces being repainted. That was certainly one that was brought to our attention. At the library, our brand new library, there is a lovely ramp that does go up to the front of the building, but there's a railing only on one side. Mm-hmm. Well, under ADA, you need to have two railings, one on either side, mm-hmm. and the railing has to have two heights, so it needs to have a higher height and a lower height, because if you were a child in a wheelchair using the railing to help you either get up or get down from the building, you need the lower height as well. So that's one thing that was pointed out to us. So there are certainly, yes, some things that are very, very obvious. And then I think, this evaluation will point out all of the things that I know, I have an eye for, folks who don't hear well. Christiana has a good eye towards all of the folks who are in our senior population, but yet I don't really know necessarily what someone with a physical disability or a vision impairment might need too. And this is where the Collins Center report will be very helpful to the town.
Oh. So if we had board, commission, committee members that needed some assistance, what do you think that, and like they were vision impaired or how would we go about doing something like that? Would that be addressed in that Collins survey, or are there things that we can do now or that we have done in the past to accommodate such a person?
Well, I
just
think,
from your experience,
people pointing out to us, situations that they may encounter, mm-hmm. Is certainly very helpful. We all drive through town. We, go into town hall. We go to the library, things like that. But mm-hmm. There are places that I might not go, and so someone, sending us an email and saying, "Gosh, I noticed this," or "I'm having difficulty with this." And then, we also have folks like Christiana who are a great resource to community resources. So if someone is, in need of that kind of referral, we may be able to provide them with that as well. So one of the things that also happened since we kind of reformed in 2020 is Jack Erickson, our building inspector, was also named as the town ADA coordinator, which is also required under the law. Mm-hmm. So in the instance of a commercial parking lot that didn't have handicap spaces, when it was brought to our attention, I called Jack and said, and I drove through that parking lot and there were no designated handicap spaces, and he worked with the building owner to make sure that they were put in place, and they're now there.
Oh, that is just wonderful.
Yeah.
Christiana, did you want to share anything?
Well, there are several resources. Like Charlotte said, we have the American Disabilities Act. Their website is very, you have information there. But I do know that not everyone is able to access that. And so when we talk about disability, we also talk about accessibility. Even though the information is there, if someone is not able to access it because of their vision impaired or because they don't have the resources, then they don't have access, period. But it is there for those who can access that. I also go on the Massachusetts Office of Disability. They have a lot of resources on there that you can use. We have the Easter seals. I know a lot of people may not know about the Easter seals. They're very helpful. They're very technology. They have free technology, actually. They can come in. When you get a referral, they'll come in, they do an assessment, and they can, develop a technology that can help someone. We use a lot of their services in the group homes where I work. They come in, they do an assessment, and they can come up with an assistive technology that can help someone, whether it's something as simple as being able to lift your own cup and sip from your own cup without someone helping you, stuff like that. They come up with things like that. We also have, the DDS, Department of Developmental Services. We work with them very closely. They have different programs for adults. They have Turning 22 program. They have Moving Forward plans. So if you're looking for resources, if you can, access those websites, they have phone numbers there. They're very helpful. The Department of Mental Health, Massachusetts Department of Mental Health, they have resources. They work with group homes. They work with different programs, nonprofit organizations like VinFan, BAMSI. They do residential programs. They also do, for example, BAMSI has what they call the employment services. If you have a loved one who is just looking to do, based on their abilities, what they can do, they do an assessment and they say, okay, you can get a job in this field. And so those are services that are out there for people. And so I would recommend that people look at the Olmsted website. It's called olmsted.org. And then you can go into your state, and you can look at the services that are there. You'll be very amazed at what we have. I think that people don't tap into those a lot, but if anyone has questions, I think the Stoughton Disability Commission is also a resource right there, and we can help as much as we can.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing. But tell me a little bit about the survey. You plan to survey the residents of the town of Stoughton. Tell me a little bit about that. And what's the game plan? What's the goal? What's the sequence for us to get that out to the residents?
Yeah, so at this point, this survey that is attached with the Collins Center work has closed. When we first reinvigorated the Disabilities Commission, we attempted a small survey, and I think we got maybe 10 respondents or 20 respondents. And the Collins Center was able to get quite a bit more. I think it's something that we would like to continue to do because, that can also help us to guide maybe some of the things that we advise the town on as far as what next steps should be. They really should be driven by the folks who live in town and the needs, and not just something that we think is a good idea.
I think it's so important as the town continues to grow, as we continue to build, we have your commission present, and you can add input, insight, and help to point out things or opportunities for the town before a project is complete, and then we have to go back and rehab it or redo it or improve it. So I think it's very important. You want to share with that?
Well, and certainly under the Americans with Disabilities Act, there are different sections that cover different things, whether it's employment or things like that. So, as the town is looking certainly to renovate existing buildings or perhaps construct new construction with an eye to ADA accessibility is required by law. But even private buildings, although, I've had someone reach out to me about one of the apartment complexes, and we really have no say over private buildings, but if there's a commercial building that's going to undergo major rehabilitation, maybe there's a commercial building that they're going to put a second floor on, at that point, yes, they are required to meet all of the ADA regulations for accessibility. So, again, we can work with the town and the zoning board and the planning board and the select board to figure out what needs to happen, or at least to be able to ask some of the questions that should be raised in the planning stages, rather than waiting for a building to go up and somebody saying, oh, but.
Yeah. And I think you made a good point. I think we have to rely on the residents of Stoughton to get the feedback. When we did the survey that you mentioned, people not being able to do it. And sometimes it's because maybe we didn't, share that enough, but we do use all the resources available to us. We go to the senior centers, we use the Suburban magazine. So
Yes.
if people can just look, some of them are so simple, whether it's you just using a QR code, scanning with your phone, and then just answering few questions. Those are very helpful, because like Charlotte said, we can't come up, we don't go to all the places around here, but we're relying on the residents to give us the feedback so we can now share this with the authorities that are supposed to be taking care of it. So we are really hoping that this would help, bring awareness to it, that we are trying to help, and that there are resources out there.
This is so wonderful. Now, are there any closing comments or other information you would like to share before we close out this session?
Well, I'm glad that we've had this chance to discuss all of these issues, and where Stoughton is at this moment in time, and I really look forward to ongoing conversation with certainly the select board and the town manager and all of the folks who make the bigger decisions as this Collins Center report comes in, and we look to the identified deficiencies and then what we can do to continue to make Stoughton an accessible place for all of the residents.
That's wonderful.
And I'd like to thank Charlotte for being such a great leader. She puts all the work in, I have to tell you. And also just to say thank you to Michael and Anne. They're part of the commission and they're not able to be here, but they show up every day. This is very dear to their heart, and they are very passionate about making sure that Stoughton is where it is today regarding disabilities.
So you're on the town's website, and so they would access or find out more information by going through the Stoughton Disability Commission?
Right, so if you go to the town website under boards and commissions, we are listed there. And for those who use Facebook, we do have a Facebook page where we try to post information or cross-post information from other Facebook sites as well.
This is just so great. Thank you so very much. I am so happy to talk to you about this important topic. And for you, citizens of Stoughton, I hope you found this session very informative, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.